Welcome to the Emotional Intelli-Gents Podcast, a podcast diving into how emotional intelligence can be unleashed to turn great people into great leaders. And now, your hosts, Ismail and Samir.
Hello, and welcome again to the Emotional Intelli-Gents Podcast, where we help current and aspiring leaders level up their ability to achieve greatness in the workplace. I'm Ismail.
And hello, I'm Samir.
So, Samir, in this episode, we'll be talking about something that has really impacted our lives in some way, shape, or form. And this is regardless of whether you realize it or not. And we use it to look at our phones, we use it when we commute to work, we use it when we do our banking or make a purchase online. And at this point, it's really become a key part of our day to day activities. And what I'm referring to is artificial intelligence.
Yeah, definitely. And it seems like everywhere that we turn these days, whether it's Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, even on the news, you're hearing about ChatGPT or Stability AI, Midjourney, these platforms that are really transforming how business operations will run, especially in the content creation space, academics. The way that the average person is getting tasks done today is already shifting due to these platforms that are already readily available.
That's right. And, I'd be willing to make a hefty wager that there's going to be some significant impacts to our day to day lives, and particularly in the workplace. And this is just as AI technology really evolves and takes hold.
And this next wave of AI and all the technological advancements that are going to come with it, I think it's people should be prepared to understand that it's going to eclipse even the advancements that have been brought about by smartphones and like the apps that have become available. This is going to happen. The AI will take hold. It's going to happen very rapidly, and it's going to happen sooner than most people are able to even keep up with.
And you know what? I think that's why it's such an important topic for us to talk about today.
Yeah.
So, you know what? Today, why don't we cover the current state of AI technology and the advancements,
hmm
and then we'll discuss maybe some positive and negative correlations between emotional intelligence and AI.
I know that you and me have been talking about this topic quite a bit. I know we've been texting about it and sending each other articles. So I'm excited to finally get a chance to talk about it in this episode. I know that, both of us have been fasting for Ramadan. And so, just us sitting here recording late at night while we can drink
Mhm.
water has been really good. So I'm just excited to get this going today.
Absolutely. Let's get right into it.
So, Ismail, some of us have been following AI advancements in the workplace closely, others maybe from a distance, and then some people not at all, right? But I think it's important that we define first EQ and then AI. EQ, for those of you who have been listening to this podcast, we've really talked about this quite a bit in like the last 5 episodes. But EI, or emotional intelligence, is the ability of a person to recognize or understand, manage, and respond to one's own emotions effectively and the emotions of others, right? But then when we look at AI, on the other hand, AI, artificial intelligence, that's referring more to the development of systems or computer systems or softwares that can perform tasks typically that require human intelligence. So you're probably, like as Ismail mentioned, you're using AI technology today, and you're doing it without really paying much attention to it at all. What we wanted to discuss today is like kind of that next evolution of AI, but you're using it now. Predictive text, right? Facial recognition, you're using that to lock and unlock your iPhone today. And then obviously everyone's best friend, Siri, right? That's another one that is heavily using AI.
AI, it's already making a significant impact in a ton of aspects, right? In particular at the workplace. And that's including an impact on emotional intelligence.
Sure.
So let me give you an example, right? We have recruiting companies. I think we're all familiar. A lot of you are familiar with ZipRecruiter,
Yep.
and they're able to use machine learning and deep learning to weed out like 75% of resumes before they're even seen by human eyes.
Wow, that's crazy. And then you wonder why so many people are complaining about not getting responses from
I
companies as
know.
they apply. So, Ismail, I was hoping that we could take a second here to explain the current state of AI as it stands today. How far has the technology advanced? The evolution of AI, where do we stand today?
Yeah, so I mean, let me just give you a general disclaimer first. We're by no means AI experts by any stretch of the imagination. But for the sake of conversation, I'm going to try and summarize it, and that's just my summarize my overall understanding of it. But so for any AI experts out there, I'm just going to apologize if I make any mistakes. But in a nutshell, to me, I kind of categorize it in two different levels or two different categories. So we've got narrow AI and then we've got general AI. So first, narrow AI, it refers to the systems that you're seeing a lot right now, but they're designed to perform specific tasks or solve specific problems, and they're
Mhm.
highly specialized, and they excel in those particular areas and those tasks that they're built to work in, right? But they lack this ability to generalize that knowledge and actually to learn from it. They can't really learn from it, and their boundaries are what the programmers have put in place. So yeah.
Okay, so they're kind of operating in what we could consider like a closed
Yeah,
universe.
yeah, and I mean,
Okay.
we have examples of those right now are ChatGPT or Stability AI, and I think you mentioned Midjourney. Those like
Mhm,
Midjourney focuses on photos, so it does
mhm.
really well in that realm.
And so, in particular, the machine learning and deep learning, what you're alluding to is this amassing of data that these programs are using to then output, uh, a work product
Yeah.
for us when we're using it.
I think in a nutshell that I totally agree. Whereas, we have general AI, and
Mhm.
this is something that's at the moment very theoretical, right? But it refers to systems that possess the ability to understand and learn and then apply that knowledge that it's learned across a
Mm,
broad range of domains. And pretty much like a human does, we learn and then we're able to apply that in other areas. And well, yeah, and
okay.
while it remains a theoretical concept, it's really at the moment, you just see it in the movies.
Okay. So just to kind of summarize that, narrow AI, that's the programs that we're seeing
Mhm.
today that are readily available, your chat GPTs, etc. And that's utilizing kind of a data set that's out there that they're deriving uh, various uh, they're doing certain computations to come up with work product. General AI is more like human intelligence, and we have not reached that point
Yeah,
yet in the AI
that's
conversation.
my overall understanding, yes.
Okay, great. And so, definitely appreciate the 101 on that because, I think it's useful to a lot of people who are just sort of joining the AI
Yeah.
conversation today. So as you noted, we aren't at the point where general AI has taken hold yet, and we aren't seeing that imminent threat of, this complete replacement of human labor in favor of robots or whatever you may, have in your in your
Right, right.
imagination of what that will be. So we just want to dispel that right off the bat, right? There is no imminent threat to human replacement, but AI tech, it has definitely reached a point where it can act as a complement or bolster, if you would, the effectiveness of humans in traditional jobs. Not just individual contributors completing tasks, but even management and how they lead their team,
Yeah.
right? So soon, um, however, I do believe that there will be jobs that will be replaced. And, I'm talking about even, more of those white collar
Mhm.
jobs. So right now, the only real given that we have is that AI is gonna change the way most of us work in our current jobs. But the AI technology, it's gonna start in a way that will complement our current jobs with the intention to make things easier. The result will also create challenges, right? And that's what we will need to confront as well as the positives that
Mhm.
come from
Mhm. I
AI.
mean, I think there's one thing that we're certain of, and that's that there's a lot to learn about AI and how it's really going to impact us. I think there's going to be a lot of impacts, but it's we aren't experiencing the full breadth of that yet. And frankly, we haven't really figured out how advanced AI truly could be.
With that said, it's still fair to say that the use of these machines, they will challenge organizations, right, to maintain that balance between leveraging AI technology, but then also using the data that's available to them through these AI technologies, making those data driven decisions. Also, though, keeping in mind how important it is to maintain that human touch. So that's going to be the challenge for organizations. How do we leverage the AI, but also maintain the human side when it comes to, emotional
Mm,
understanding, the communication piece, right? Like so crucially important to organizations, how they communicate, how we lend support to our teams, and really just ensuring that emotional intelligence remains a
mm.
vital aspect of leadership and interpersonal relationships in the workplace remain vital despite the utilization of AI.
I think that's a fair point. And I think as it stands, like the landscape of how AI is being adopted today, it's changing so quickly, and it's changing across all industries at the moment. I think we're seeing that right
Mhm.
now. That repetitive tasks are being replaced with AI systems, and it's also helping enhance human decision making. Right. So
Right.
for instance, think of all of the bank transactions and debit transactions that we do every second. I'm talking across the world, right? And there's right now AI in place that can pretty quickly and confidently identify whether a given transaction is valid or not, and
Sure.
invalid for that matter. If it's invalid, it'll kick it out, and you get all those notifications on your phone about there being fraud. But I just want you to imagine if humans were responsible for doing that, and you had this horde of humans that would have to sit there and just like verify every transaction. I don't think that would be really feasible. And
Or as effective.
Frank, yeah, that's right. I mean, this humans are fallible, right? And
Correct.
so, like, what are some of the other areas that AI is making strides in? So, I mentioned automation, right?
Sure.
Data analysis and decision making, like it's able to, like you were saying earlier, analyze huge amounts of data. Then we have things like natural language processing. And I want you to think of that as like your standard chatbot that you might use on a website to kick off a particular conversation. It can answer, what do you want to do? Is this about billing? Is this about an error in
Sure.
your service? And the next level of that, actually, that's ChatGPT. That's kind of the next level of natural language processing. And then something that, I personally never really thought of, but this is actually having personalized learning and development being provided or pushed up to people on a day-to-day basis, say.
Yeah. Another area that I think about is recruitment and talent management. And this one in particular, it kind of scares me because the technology, it's able to or will be able to or is already being utilized to measure how successful a candidate could
Right.
be in a job, right? Or identify high performing talent autonomously. And so, this could preclude good candidates from being considered
Mhm.
based on the machine's analysis alone, which is kind of scary if you think about it, right?
I mean, I think that is just the concept of that is really fascinating. And I mean, so
Yeah.
everything we've talked about gives us a pretty solid background of AI and where it's at, right? Or where it's generally heading for that matter. And but it does beg the question, which is what's the relationship between artificial intelligence and specifically emotional intelligence? Like, how does AI behave
Mhm.
when it comes to either enhancing or detracting from the notion of emotional intelligence?
Yeah, man, that's a great question. And admittedly, we don't have a concrete answer
Mm,
for it right now, right? Any conclusions regarding the AI impact on the use of emotional intelligence at this stage are, speculative, I'd say. And there are initiatives in place to enhance EQ using AI, and we'll discuss some of those. And there's pros and cons to implementing this sort of technology that we'll also need to discuss.
right. That's right. We're obviously just scratching the tip of the iceberg, right? And how we look at it is, I think, going to change over time. But why don't we do this? Why don't we look at some use cases where AI actually has a net positive reaction or impact on overall EQ in the workplace?
Okay, yeah, sounds good.
I have to say, I I didn't really think about how AI would impact EQ before I really started digging into this. And I have to say, the more I learned about AI advancements, what's going on with the technology in general and the future of it, the more I realized there's going to be way more of an impact than I could have ever imagined. And I mean, one
Mhm.
opinion that I have, I think it might differ possibly from mainstream opinions at the moment, and this is whether AI will actually cause us to lose our jobs. You touched on that in the beginning, right? It's not, we don't have an imminent threat right now, but people are
Yeah.
definitely concerned about it, and they're talking about it a lot. So
Yep.
my
Yep.
my point here is, will it replace some of the duties or entire roles that people do? Yes. I mean, it invariably will. But I think that
Yeah.
means a couple of things. So those people that AI might replace their function or some of their duties, theoretically that frees those people up to do more challenging and important work, whether that be in their
Mhm.
current role or a completely different role, right? It's not just, okay,
Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
replaced and they're out. And two, it'll allow people to figure out how to use AI or how to let it augment their current roles. So people will start
Mhm.
learning how to use AI to their advantage rather than it just replacing them. And theoretically, like, it will start solving problems that they wouldn't have even thought of trying to solve without it. Right.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
we've been through similar situations in the past where, there's been such huge technological leaps. And
Yeah.
while I'm sure people felt the same way, I'm certain that they felt the same way back then. But as people do, they adapted. They adapted back
Right.
then, and frankly, they're gonna adapt today. Well, what I mean by today is as AI comes in and takes hold. And
Sure.
really, I think we can consider this like the present day industrial revolution from the 18th century.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it definitely feels kinda like 2005, 2006, right? When those first smartphones were being released, we knew that this was gonna change the way we live.
Right.
We didn't exactly know how. We didn't understand quite how quickly it would happen.
Mm,
But, I agree. I agree with what you're saying, and you talk about freeing people up to work on higher value tasks, and I'm thinking about a profession that's near and dear to my heart, right? The legal practice. So much of an attorney's time is spent in discovery, drafting pleadings, writing these lengthy briefs.
right.
And AI is going to come in, it's going to replace all of that, right? It's really going to free up lawyers to work more on strategy, working closer with their clients and truly counseling them. So in the end, we won't see AI cause a large scale replacement of lawyers. But what we will see for sure is that lawyers who use AI, they will replace lawyers that are not using AI.
Interesting. Yeah.
Right, but specifically with AI and how it relates to EQ in the workplace, there are AI tools being developed that will help leaders be more emotionally intelligent in their approach. And how leaders will do this is through machines providing sentiment analysis, right? And as the tech advances, we will be able to understand the emotions of
Mm,
people better. And it's now I say better, but there's some nuance to that, right? Because machines, they're going to be the ones analyzing the sentiment through a combination of factors, right? Verbal and nonverbal communication analysis. They'll listen to tone, they'll look at facial
that's right.
expression, they'll look at body language, they'll look at the verbiage that the person is using. And it's crazy to think about, but that's going to draw conclusions about the emotional state of your staff. And this is going to give leaders deeper understanding of their team's emotions and their feelings.
Right.
So these AI tools, they're going to provide us with insights about employee satisfaction, engagement level, potential burnout, and that's going to give leaders ability to react quicker and make decisions. And it's kind of crazy and trippy to think about.
So, in one of our previous episodes, we talked about the business case for EQ, right? And if I recall, one of the points that we made was employees are pretty much like demanding that skill set exists in the workplace. It's almost a must
Sure.
have, right? And I think just people's perspectives have changed. Um, we have a different generation. They're coming in. They have different needs and wants and demands.
They want that kinda holistic emotional support.
That's right. And if organizations are going to want to attract talent, it's something that they're going to need. And
Sure.
one thing that I've read up on recently is how AI can truly enhance overall EQ of an organization, right? And how it's doing this. It's a little bit interesting, a little bit freaky, but it's by monitoring and promoting mental health and well-being with the use of like AI powered chatbots. So
Interesting.
yeah, it's doing analysis, it's doing, some deep learning, and then pretty much they can offer resources to employees for stress reduction or emotional regulation and coping mechanisms. And then they can also help employees connect with mental health professionals and different resources just to
Mhm.
help along the way, right?
Interesting,
Yeah.
very interesting.
In this case, we're talking about like AI monitoring various aspects of employees. And that's kind of ranging from their email, maybe their chats that they have. It can look at workloads maybe through various avenues, right? Maybe time cards and things like that, right? And it can make
Yeah,
suggestions on how they might be able to manage any or mitigate actually maybe for that matter challenges that might come up. So
sure.
we all have, well, not all, for those of you that have learning management systems at work, uh, AI can start targeting different courses or videos or trainings that can support you in your specific needs. And,
Mm.
there's obviously some cons here. And I know that the audience is all thinking about them based on what I just said in terms of monitoring. And we'll get to that. But I think the fact is that these types of opportunities that AI is providing, they really could provide, if used properly, a really supportive environment. And that's while ultimately bolstering and raising the emotional health of the workforce.
I really like the example you brought up of the LMS or, the development and learning. I know that people are always looking for opportunities to learn and develop and find career growth. And so if we're utilizing AI to identify weaknesses, we can really give that catered training to enhance their skills and target specific areas for improvement rather than just hitting them with a training that may not be as relevant to their trajectory or their desired path. So that's a really, really interesting point.
Another area that I can that I think AI can impact EQ is just around general communication and collaboration. And the way
Hmm.
I see it, like AI in its simplest form, it can do things just like streamline routine tasks and workflows, like approval of
Sure.
expense reports or approval of time cards.
Hmm.
And that in general gives people more time and availability to have effective conversations with their team members rather than doing that work, right? So let's talk
Yeah.
about some examples for a second. And frankly, I'm not even sure if these are hypotheticals because like I've seen or at least heard of some of these things already being in action, right? So I
Okay.
want you to imagine for a second that you had a personal assistant, a live human personal assistant, and they handled everything for you from like your meeting schedule to reminders, key dates, and like things like, for instance, Smear, you need to go take a bathroom break, or you haven't eaten your lunch, you need to go eat your lunch. And
Okay.
so, I mean, the beauty of that is a lot of just administrative tasks are kind of taken off your
Sure.
plate and taken off your mental load, right?
Right.
Now,
Right.
what I want you to imagine is if everyone had an assistant like that, but it's
Mm.
virtual, right?
Okay.
Think about the amount of time you could save and take that time and actually spend it having a face to face conversation or virtual for that matter with someone about some like critical or key decision.
So that's interesting. Yeah. I mean, it kind of ties back to what we were saying that AI can truly complement
Hmm.
uh, today's work environment, right? And so somebody kind of guiding you through those things that you're constantly taking breaks to do
Right.
and just sort of taking care of it and kind of pushing you onward so you can really focus on those higher value tasks. And I mean, that's the dream, right?
For sure. And I mean, I currently don't have an assistant, so I would love a virtual assistant, and I hope AI makes that leap really quickly. And
Yeah.
another thought I had was we were recently in a previous episode we were talking about conflict. I think this was
Okay.
during our conversation about resilience, right?
Yep. Yep.
And I just want you to think about, and you brought this up earlier, but sentiment analysis, right? Can you
Okay.
imagine if you had these like sentiment analysis units kind of floating around, or there were tools that you had access to, and they're able, like,
Okay.
imagine if they're detecting like nuanced emotions in a conversation that you're having, or attitudes that you're expressing or the other person is expressing, and
Uh-huh.
if they could, like, kinda give you warnings and prevent you from having some sort of conflict, right? Because we know
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
we said that it's inevitable, that conflict's inevitable. Imagine if you had
Yeah.
this sentiment analysis that's like, "Boop, boop," telling you that you're gonna avoid something. Essentially, you could anticipate a conflict before you even realize that it's gonna happen, and it could just
Yeah.
guide you differently, and I just,
Yeah.
I think the opportunities on this front seem completely and absolutely endless.
No, that's crazy. I'm laughing, but I'm also just, like, thinking about, like, those memes or those, where people talk about, like, work speak, like, "As I mentioned," really means,
Yes.
"As I mentioned in my email," here's, like, really means, like, "You better open my email
Yes.
from 2 days ago and read it," you know? So, like, that it would just pick up on those nuances by, like, really looking at our verbal and written communication. I mean, it's wild, but I can see it adding so much efficiency to an organization because really friction causes so much inefficiency,
Right.
right? And
And
so
it's
when there's friction
unnecessary, right? Unnecessary
it's
friction,
completely unnecessary.
right? It's
Yeah.
interpreted differently. I know I personally use all, like, I should have a printout of those terms and the terms to
Yeah,
avoid.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah, because I think I use them inadvertently all the time.
I completely do the same, but, no, I mean, this is crazy. It's cool to think about. It's overwhelming to think about. It's kinda terrifying,
Yeah,
but,
yeah,
yeah, no, it's all really exciting and new.
for sure. I mean, why don't we take a moment and why don't we actually change gears and talk about the challenges and pitfalls of AI and how that impacts the emotional intelligence.
No, let's do that. I think that sounds great.
Hey, if you've enjoyed the show so far or found some helpful information, check the show notes where you can join our mailing list, get additional EQ tips and tricks, and also stay up to date on upcoming topics and events. All right, Samir. So far we've painted a fairly rosy picture of AI, but as they say, every rose has its thorn.
Mhm. Yep.
And one thorn that immediately jumps to mind is the consequences of relying too heavily on AI. Right? I have
Okay.
this worry, or I imagine people will just kind of like stop developing their own capabilities or honing their skills just because they have AI by their side. Like,
Yeah.
will you stop writing emails because you have ChatGPT? Will you?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, it does make mistakes, but if you're just so reliant on it, just cranking out emails and copying pasting, that could be a problem, right? And
Yeah.
just and going back to skills, for instance, like we've said, emotional intelligence is a skill, right? And you can learn it. And I think with any skill, you have to practice it and push yourself to get better at it. And while there have been great strides made with AI and performing some of our complex tasks, I just don't think it can replace things like human intuition, empathy, and adaptability. Like, these are things that are just really critical to having good, strong, effective emotional intelligence. And it's just not
Mhm.
something that I really.
And relationships,
Right.
right?
That's
Like,
right.
it's kind of the foundation of building that trust as a leader are those things that you
That's
mentioned,
right.
right? Like, the empathy piece is so important.
Correct. It's critical
And I
for
think
leadership.
right, and leaders, they need to be able to balance the use of AI with their own emotional intelligence and do that to make, like, really well-rounded decisions because the AI tools that are available, Today, as we've explained, right, they amass endless amounts of data, they
Mhm,
derive conclusions, they provide information. But the crazy thing is that the user, they have no way to trace how the AI tool arrived at its
mm,
conclusions. So this is why, like, you often hear in AI conversations about like the black box problem,
mhm,
because and what that's referencing is like much like our brains, like where we struggle to trace back and figure out the source of where a thought or an idea may have entered our mind. uh, AI has the same problem. So we don't know where the conclusions come from. We just see the conclusion. So humans, they're still going to need to be able to explain concepts and explain the reasoning for decisions, even if AI is helping the human arrive at that decision. So, we talked about these tools that are going to provide sentiment analysis, right? Now, at the end of the day, that tool, we're not gonna be able to really see how they arrived at that conclusion.
mm.
There So that part of it is where, the human becomes so critically important, is we need to be the one to add the, context around
Sure.
what the AI tool is
Sure.
telling
You
us.
know, you know, I'm a huge believer in the why and understanding the why behind something. If you
Sure.
can explain to someone the why, I think it really goes a long way in getting them, on your side or influencing them. And I think it's
Mhm.
also just a critical part of the whole EQ formula. And
Yeah.
I can't see it frankly anytime happening anytime soon where AI is able to say, and let me tell you why. And in a
Yeah.
way that's really influential or deep. Or not
Mhm.
yet, right? So without there being some huge leap in innovation, I think dipping into the general AI territory, and by that I mean like self-aware I think right now there's a huge gap that remains there.
And another issue that's already being identified as well is that AI, as we mentioned, it's learning from all these different data sets and it collects information across various sources,
Right.
one of which is the internet. So we're seeing that, a lot of the data out there is biased or has undertones of systemic race inequality. And so AI is the information or the conclusions that it's reaching runs the risk of providing businesses. And we're already seeing this with biased or in some cases racist guidance, which is super, super
It's a slippery
dangerous.
slope, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's definitely one of the pitfalls that businesses are seeing using AI.
Sure.
Yeah. But Ismail, from your perspective, this emotional or behavior monitoring that we've been talking about, do you see this as creating a privacy or ethical concern?
Mm.
And are people going to be okay with this level of invasive monitoring?
So I think there's going to be a huge debate that's going to open up about this. The hypotheticals on what AI can do, they're really vast. And
Hmm.
I mean, in certain situations, I personally would be okay with some of the benefits that are being provided by AI. But at the same
Okay.
time, I'm
Yep.
really skeptical when you're introducing the notion of things that are really invasive, like facial recognition, where computers know how I feel before I do, or even before I'm agreeing or I've decided to express it to someone else. That to me is
Interesting.
really something like I think there are probably some ethical concerns, at least that I have with it.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think from my perspective, the value of the technology, I think, will eventually become so high that people will
Mm,
just fall in line. They're going to
okay.
accept it. Right. And I kind of liken it to like Facebook tracking or your smartphone in general, right? The utility of the technology, it's so high that people are just like, all right, it's fine that my phone and Google and Facebook are tracking my every move and they know where I'm going. And when I sit in my car and start it, they give me the time to a place that I'm actually going because they've been studying the patterns of my commute. So while I see the negative impact, right, this could have on trust or morale, but I can also see it as a potential boost, right? We know that one of the things today's workforce is really seeking is to be seen and to be heard. And regarding their emotional state toward work, that holistic support that they're truly craving. And so if these technological advancements will make that easier, and if everyone is operating under, like, an established clear guidelines and ethical standards for using this AI to monitor emotions, I think at the end it's
Right.
gonna be
I mean,
fine.
I have a love-hate relationship with all of these tracking things. Like, I know that I'm constantly turning on and off that, location feature, right? And, so,
Okay.
I mean, I think I flip-flop back and forth. But, as you were kinda talking about leadership uh, and how this can kind of advance that, right? It got me thinking about, remote work and how it's becoming more and more
Mhm.
popular. And for me as a leader, one thing that I really started to miss was the face-to-face conversations and discussions. I mean, there were times where I really struggled to gauge the emotional state of people, or just assess their nonverbals in general. Like, I really get a lot of cues from those, and there were times that I was struggling.
Mm.
And this is just like something that happens when you're seeing a face on a screen or a voice on a phone. And I mean, can you imagine
Right.
if not only do you work remotely and see everyone over Zoom, but now you have like this technology or these tools that are telling you how you should react and feel based on someone else's nonverbals or the analysis. And I think, frankly, a big part of building your overall EQ and intuition is just the ability to build those relationships and make human connections. And this is just something that
Mhm.
I don't think can be done very well in a remote environment.
Okay. No, interesting. I mean, I understand what you're saying as far as, face to face being the ideal environment to read the
Right.
emotional state of your people. And, the ramifications of AI, they could be huge. And I still believe though that we might be on the precipice of a shift in how we interact, right? And how emotions of our workforce is managed. I think the question eventually will be, simply if the pros of the monitoring outweigh the privacy concerns. And I think you said the tool will tell us how
Mm.
you should react, but I see it more as a tool simply telling us how you are reacting. It's not being prescriptive in nature, and in my opinion, if the tool is giving more information than people may be able to manifest through their uh, their presence or through conversation, then more information is not bad. Is kind of my thought about it.
Okay, I mean, that's an interesting perspective. And look, I mean, I think it's fair to say that no one has a crystal ball that's going to be able to tell us how this is all going to shake out.
Yeah, it's all so new, and and like you said, there is no crystal ball. But today, I would say we did a good job explaining the current state of artificial intelligence technology, where it's at, and how we think it's going to impact EQ in the workplace, both positively and negatively.
Right. I mean, it's advancing so rapidly. And I know for a fact that we're going to have other episodes on this very topic soon.
Yeah, yeah, we will, and I'm looking forward to it. And that's it. Thanks so much for listening. This show really wouldn't be possible without you. If you're a fan of the show, please take a look at the show notes where you can find more information about the podcast and information that can support you, as well as info on how you can support us.
Thanks, Mir. And thanks to everyone listening. Until our next episode, I'm going to leave you with this quote from Apple CEO Tim Cook. As we embrace the power of AI, we must remain focused on our humanity, our creativity, and our compassion so that we can build a future that benefits all of us.